Welcome to Creatively Christian, a podcast by Theophany Media, where we inspire, inform, educate, and empower creative Christians of all types. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Hollingsworth.
On today's episode, I get to visit with singer-songwriter, author, and entrepreneur Aaron Everitt. We hope you enjoy this encouraging conversation where we talk about the creativity of good business, as well as how our work is a service to others. And stay tuned after the episode to make sure you enjoy the original song by Aaron. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Creatively Christian. Andrea Sandefur here. I get to be your host again today. And today I am joined by Aaron. Aaron comes all the way from Colorado, where I used to live, kind of in that area. And so this was kind of fun to be able to connect and kind of talk through a few things Colorado with him in our prior conversation. But I'm excited to bring him to you guys today. And Aaron, I'm just going to have you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself, like kind of where you live there in Colorado, your family, and a bit of your ministry work highlights.
Sure. So I live in Windsor, Colorado, which is just about an hour north of Denver. That's probably the most familiar thing for people when they talk about Colorado is where's Denver. So we're about an hour north of that, just below the Wyoming border. I've lived here most of my life. I was born in Utah while my dad was in school over there, but just lived there for brief moment, and then came back to Colorado. And family's been here forever. We've been here in Colorado since 1917. So
Wow.
It's kind of, and it just really is the place we like to be. Although we kind of I call myself a child of the West because I love Wyoming, I love Colorado, and of course have this little stint in Utah when I was 9 months old that I don't remember. I have 4 boys. I've been married 20 years this year. Married a Prairie Rose, who's wonderful, just a lovely woman that I met at through some connections at Bible college while I was in Canada. And we have 4 boys, so 2 17-year-old twins, a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old. So we're right in the thick of being teenage parents, but super fun. My kids are wonderful. My wife homeschools our kids, and I think we do that as they've gotten older. I've definitely been more engaged in the education portion of it too. So I kind of help out a couple of days a week with doing some things with an old friend from college that we do a literature class together with them. And then I just kind of feel like generally education, that's a long, big topic in our house, but the 7 sacred subjects that everybody wants to talk about, I tend to like to think about education a little bit more holistically, and we approach it a lot of ways. So it might be on the river fishing, it might be skiing one afternoon, it may be just a conversation in the car. So that's a lot of how we tend to educate our children. And
Awesome.
It's been a fun adventure, a hard one for sure. I always tell people, don't ask my wife if she wants to continue to homeschool in May, because it's by the end of the year.
Give her the summer off to recoup.
We approached it that way from the beginning, and kind of said, well, we'll take it a year at a time. And now we're towards the end of it, and we're still taking it a year at a time. But yeah, good stuff. I do all sorts of things. So I'm in the real estate space currently as a job. So I'm a real estate broker, developer, kind of do some things in that space, and have always been in that because my family's always been in that. I've worked for a family business for 15 years and did some other things along the way, but I've kind of always been in the real estate space. As far as my ministry stuff and what I've done, I left Colorado for a minute, wanted to go see if I could find a different adventure. So I moved to Canada, just totally on a whim. I had a friend that was there, and they were like, you got to come to Bible college up here. It's an incredible experience. And so I moved kind of sight unseen to a little town called Strathmore, Alberta, just outside of Calgary. And I went to school in that area for 3 years and just fell in love with Canada. And also at the same time, fell in love with playing music. So I started at that point, wanted to be in a band, had some friends that were from Bible college, and we started just getting together and playing music. And then we made an album, and we just, one thing leads to another. Pretty soon we have a minivan full of sound equipment traveling around the country, playing music. So that was the fun time that was kind of a really fun time to do music because you could actually still make it work. You have T-shirts and CDs and stuff, and so it was something that if you had all that stuff, you could always find a way to get to the next town. And we had a great time. It was like 4 years time, spending a lot of time on the road, just probably 100+ days a year traveling and playing music in different shows. And it was awesome. It was a really great experience, and I just had a blast doing it. Been very involved in our churches, local churches over time. You switch those every once in a while. So been involved in that quite a bit. Play music in the band, play bass in the band most of the time because there's never a bass player. So I usually do. And
I don't know. I was looking for an electric guitarist earlier this morning. My bassist was solid, but the electric one, he tailed off. I'm like, oh no! So you never know.
Well, especially in the world, it's like if you don't have a bass player and an electric guitar player, you're in trouble. So
you are in trouble.
Yeah. So anyway, I do that, and then I've always loved writing, so I wrote this book a few years ago, or a year ago, I guess. It was released, and just have had a lot of fun doing that and kind of playing around in that space and getting the chance to talk about the book and preach at a couple of churches. And it's been a good thing. Really, I kind of in college had this big kind of revelation about who Jesus actually was. So I became a Christian through Young Life. In college, kind of had this revelation about the fact that I kept trying really hard to work my way towards having Jesus like me, and realized in college that actually that was an unattainable thing because he already did like me. So I was pursuing something that was already completed, and then kind of just beat myself up about it and got to a pretty low spot in my life and had this revelation that God might actually like me and love me, even it wasn't just a platitude in an old dusty book. So that was kind of a cool thing. And out of that, I've spent the last however long in church mentoring people and kind of participating in this. And then this kind of culminated by writing this book and trying to come to a place where I could articulate to my kids what I hoped they wouldn't have to actually just go through as an experience that I went through, which was this kind of, I don't know, season of depression and misery, thinking that Jesus, was up there in God, in heaven, sort of keeping track of everything that I was doing wrong. And then, sort of at the end of the night saying, well, you messed up again today, but I guess it's okay. I kind of flipped that script a little bit in my head, and I wrote this book to hopefully help my kids understand that at some point if they'll read it.
Yeah. I love when you told me in our prior conversation that you'd written it for your kids. I just thought that was wonderful. And what a great way to embark on a project, to write something for somebody specific like that, and then watch it unfold and be used in other ways. That's just icing on the cake then. I think that's really great.
So it was, I sometimes because I like to write, I thought, that'd be fun to write a book. I wonder who I should write it for, and I wonder what I should write it about. And there's lots of things that I would love to write about. I write for a lot of different things, and I just love to write articles. I love to write different stuff. Just as one of those things that it's a hobby. I don't make any money doing it, but it's really fun to do. And I thought, that's a great audience. My kids, I would hope that if someday I was hit by a bus and was gone out of here, that they might have a good memory of, or at least have a chance to go back and understand what I thought about Jesus and what I thought about Christianity and faith. So, and why it mattered to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I don't know if we're not going to talk too much about your book today, because as people will know pretty soon here, you're pretty business savvy. So I wanted to kind of hone in on some of that. But tell everybody what the title of your book is and maybe how they could find it.
Yeah, sure. It's called Careless in the Care of God, which is kind of a stretch from Eugene Peterson's message. It's a little phrase in Sermon on the Mount that I really liked. And so that's the title of the book. You can find it on any place that's out there. I did it as an audiobook on a podcast, so you can find that too. So if you want to just listen to it, it's a podcast that's like, I would read a chapter or two of the book, and then I would do my thoughts on hey, this is why I wrote this particular chapter. So that's kind of out there too. And just something for somebody to go listen to or read at some point along the way.
Very good. We're going to have another offsite conversation about audiobooks. I'm doing a few, producing a few for friends right now, and I'm a little lost on how to do that. So we're going to have to talk after this a bit about that. So let's keep going though, because your love of business is something that really
Yeah.
kind of drew me to talking to you today, because that can be such a stumbling block for creatives.
Yeah.
So how did you discover your love of business? And, could you kind of expand on how you believe we can view the business side as
Yeah.
another vein of creativity?
Yeah. So I fell in love with it actually by buying a ledger at Target and a blue folder that I had to keep track of all my stuff. Like when we were on the road and no one in our band was, everybody's worried about playing the music and how good do we sound and this stuff. And I was worried about that too, but I also knew that I had 4 guys in the truck and we needed to get to the next town. And so there was no way to do that if we were going to not figure out how to do that. You take so much money in, and there's going to be so much money that has to go out for food and hotels and other things along the way. And, if you don't do that well, you can find yourself stuck in Brookings, South Dakota pretty quick. So I kind of was like, well, I'll take this on. I kind of am intrigued by this conversation about how to do this. And so I fell in love with it actually I bought a ledger at Target, and I bought a blue folder that was a collapsible folder that had a lid on it. And I would shove our receipts in there. And every night when we'd finish the show, no matter what time it was, I'd get that thing out and I'd start to write down, what did we spend and what did we earn? How many CDs did we sell? How many t-shirts did we sell? And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I realized I could sustain us being on the road by simply taking care of those details. And so the more that I wanted to be on the road and the more that I wanted to play, the more places I wanted to play, the better I had to get at that. And so, because you got to stretch every dollar. And so there were nights that it was like, well, tonight we have $5 for dinner for the 4 of us. So go buy some combos at the gas station. And that's what we got. So I know it may not be great. We didn't have a great night. We didn't sell enough CDs. But if we'd have just put that all on credit cards or whatever, then we weren't going to make it very long. And so we had to have a system. And so I put that together. My bass player friend used to joke about that. I put a label together, right? So I put this record label together, and that was how we would do bookings. So it felt like we had a little bit more substance there than might have been because our guy was calling from Targhee Creek Records, to book the show.
Yeah.
And so we put this record label together, and my bass player used to joke about that Targhee Creek Records was a blue folder in the back of our van. And it really was. I mean, That's really what was happening, but we were trying to build this, and we, eventually we had other artists that wanted to try to participate with us. And so there was enough money to make a CD for them so that they could get on the road. And so it was just this kind of fun deal that ended up being something I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it, and started to realize creativity comes in all sorts of forms and fashions. And I think people who play instruments and write or whatever, right, take pictures, sometimes we want to disassociate those two things. We want to say that making money is kind of this dark secret that you have to have as a creative. And so there's this I don't want to make any money because it just seems like it's corruptible and evil and all, money's evil. And I really kind of approached it the other way, which was well, I get to stay on the road if I make money. Yeah. And I love it out here. And I really enjoy being with my friends, and I really enjoy meeting people, and I really enjoy the ministry we're doing. And I really enjoy all this stuff that we're kind of being able to do simply because I'm getting better at doing this, getting better at doing the business. I'm getting better at booking. I'm getting better at asking for the right, the money at the end of the night, and all the stuff that were these fundamental principles of how you do business. And, it's really fun to see that kind of materialize, because then you become something that doesn't have to be these mutually exclusive things. I don't have to just be a creative person or a capitalist. I get to be both. I think that's really fun. I actually, at the end of the day, I think capitalism is this beautiful thing where I have to service you in order for you to part with your hard green earned money, right? And so if I'm not at the root of service in that, then I'm not doing anything. I'm just kind of moving along. And so if I view capitalism as actually a gift of service and something that turns kind of from the perspective of being a believer, that I want to love my neighbor. Capitalism just is this kind of great medium and exchange that allows us to do it efficiently, but it doesn't have to be evil. And I think that's something that artists and creatives tend to love to fall into this camp, that, you know, it just stinks that I can't make money's such an evil thing. I flipped it on my head. It flipped on my head when I was out on the road, because it's like, man, I get to keep doing the fun things I love doing if I earn money. And by earning money, that's not evil. It just helps us keep going. And so that's how I fell in love with business. And I've done a bunch of businesses. I kind of call myself an insatiable entrepreneur, because I seem to always find another thing or try to solve a problem by starting another business or whatever. And I love it. And I just, it's a fun deal. It can be exhausting for sure, but at the same time, I get a lot of energy out of it. And I find that the creativity about how to do that is really attractive to me, as far as being a believer. Like, that's a creative space too. They don't have to be eliminated. Just because I play the guitar or write a book or any of that kind of stuff. Like, that doesn't mean that I can't also find creative things to do in business, like how to solve a problem or how to pay payroll or how to make this month's rent in my operations. Like, that takes a creativity, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love your view of capitalism in all of this, that if we view it as a gift of service, then, and echoing, like, if we earn, we get to keep creating, like we get to keep going. I'm getting ready to release a single, and it feels kind of, again, that sticky, like, now I got to start earning money, and but then I get to write some more, I get to produce more. And so that's it's a gift. It's a gift of service. I love that. It's really good.
Yeah, I think we just, I don't know. I think I don't know, this is a little bigger topic, but I think our society in general views people who want to try to achieve, because there's been unscrupulous people for sure in this space, but the lion's share of us just are like, we're just people that want to do this together, right? Like, you have something that I want, so the easiest way for us to do that is to exchange money. That doesn't, I might trade you chickens for it at some point if I grew chickens, but maybe you don't need chickens. So money kind of becomes this really great vehicle that allows us to do that. And so it doesn't make it evil. Yeah. And I think people really tend, especially creatives, we love to vilify the whole system, but it's like, man, this is a beautiful system. Art is beautiful because we have the chance to exchange. Like, if you have something that I want, if you have art I want, there's no better way. Like, maybe I could write you a song about it or something like that, but that exchange may not help you feed your kids. And I just think the whole thing is so, it's such a beautiful, wonderful thing that it doesn't need to be vilified quite as much as it has been.
No, I agree. That's really great. It's a nice perspective shift. So Aaron, you, as you've been talking through, people are catching on, you wear many hats, or you have worn many hats. All the while you have been a creative yourself. You've been writing and creating music. We have a lot of hobbyists that listen in. What are your best tips for those that are busy doing the day job and still want to create?
Find the space, keep doing it. I think it's really easy to get discouraged. Again, some of those things that are inhibitors for people. I don't have the money to make a single. I don't have the money to buy a microphone. I don't have because I can't do it. I think the reality is try your best to just keep pushing into it. Try your best to do what you can. It's always surprising to me how much people want to limit their capacity to do those things. I think people look at me and like, wow, how do you find the time to do all this stuff? Like, well, I did, because you make the time to do it. I think you try your hardest to go try to find that space to make it work. And it may not be amazing. When I was writing songs a lot, I had a great mentor in the songwriting space who told me, write a song every day. It might stink, might be the worst thing you've ever written, but force yourself to finish writing a song, because you never know if the bridge from that song actually ends up being a bridge you use in a song down the road. But if you're not doing it and you're not trying, then what you'll do is just beat yourself up and say, well, that song stunk and that was no good. And I'm not good at this. It's like, yeah, well, nobody's good at this. You got to get better. You got to practice. You got to get better at doing the things you do. I think the same thing has always happened for me in business, even where first, you might have a really great idea. Somebody told me once, a great idea is born every 15 seconds, but there's very few people who will get off the couch then at that point and take that idea and make it into something. That takes something inside of you. That's a fortitude that that's a muscle you have to exercise and make. It doesn't just happen for people. It's not something that you just get to have a great idea and all of a sudden you're rich. There's a lot of work between those two things.
Yeah.
And that means that you have to try to make that muscle work. And I think that's really important because most of the time, again, as creatives, we don't love to talk about that kind of stuff. We don't love to talk about the work that it takes to get from my talent to my treasure. Like there's this gap there that takes a long time and a lot of energy. And sometimes there's failures and sometimes there's successes and sometimes there's real failures, like going broke and all that kind of stuff can happen in that. But the pursuit of it is really a muscle. It builds a muscle in you that's just special and unique. And the people that'll do that and will do that work, even as hobbyists, the people that will do that will find that at some point the success sort of naturally comes because you've built a muscle that you didn't have otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to view it. Is almost like weight training, that keeping ourselves fit for our creativity by doing a little bit every day, a song a day. Wow. That was intense, I'm sure. And like you said, they were probably, over half of them probably were trash, and you're like, never going to see the light of day. But the puzzle pieces, like being able to take a melody from here or a lyric from here, you can view songs as almost like a puzzle, to where you may have a 1,000 different parts and maybe only 20 of them fit into this song, and narrowing it down to an idea or something. But at least you have the content to work with. You have the pieces to work with. If you have that content, that's great.
It was such a great, whether I could pull it off or not was a different story. I mean, it's really hard to sit down and try to write a song a day. Yeah. It's really hard. However, what it did for me was make me pick the guitar up every day and sit there and try again and try something else. And there's plenty of times where it's like, I'm too tired and I just want to go to bed and I'm not going to do it tonight. Yeah. And that's a reality, because life does get in the way of those things too. But the discipline of making yourself try is just something that's so critical. And creatives, we're not natural. We don't have a natural tendency towards that effort. We look at things differently, because I think, and I'm speaking as a creative person, we look at it and say our creativity is the sort of pinnacle of our experience as a person. And so when we do that, then we think everyone else should notice the pinnacle of our experience. Yes. Without anything in there. And the reality is like, people don't know who you are. They don't care. They got their own things, and they're worried about burning their chicken dinner tonight, whatever it is. They're not going to just naturally be inclined to look at you and say, gosh, that's a really creative person. And I really like what they have to offer. You actually have to put the work in there to get that, to turn that talent into something else. And the Bible talks about that. I mean, it very clearly talks about, like, you don't just put it in just bury it in the ground. You work at it. You try your best and you put effort at these things. And when that happens, something comes of it. And there's just a natural tendency to that. And I think if we flipped our mindset about that as people and as creatives and looked at it and said, yeah, well, there's work to be done here. Even in this space, I'm not owed anything just because I simply have some talent and I'm a thoughtful, creative person. I have to put the work in. And I think that's really a message that most creatives want to skip past.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. That's good. That's another good shift. Speaking of shifts, you just thinking of your career and just how God has brought you on your creative journey and the different hats he's had you wear. I love when we can take a step back at a certain point in our lives and look back at all the things God has had us do and how he's taken fragments of those moments, those seasons, and worked them together. So have you seen that as a reality in your life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the best part about telling the story of Jesus to people, is that I think I have been much more open. I think us people of faith, generally, this is probably true, especially as you're younger. You're much more open to the movement of what God might be doing, right? And so again, it's another muscle you develop over time, that the Holy Spirit works within you to say, well, I want to be open to as much opportunity as possible. Maybe I don't know where it's going to take me. I don't know who it's going to put me in front of, but I want to do the best I can to be open to those things. And so I kind of learned that when I moved to college, when I went to Canada. That was, my story up to that point was, hey, I'm kind of living here in Colorado. Everything's pretty safe, pretty secure. I have, family's been around here forever. We've been in the real estate business. There's like a whole business for me to just jump into and be a part of if I wanted to. And I just felt this stirring inside of me. Like, I know I need to do something different, right? I need to go find my voice. I need to go find where I sit in this space with Jesus and with Spirit. And so I moved. And that's like, already that starts a story that's more incredible than I could have ever written on my own. I meet some fantastic friends and lifelong friends that are people that we were just in Wyoming fishing together 23 years later. We do it every year, and it's just these people that are super deep, lifelong, rich friends that we can share everything about. I wouldn't have ever met them with not having gone to Bible college. Through that connection, I meet my wife, and then I have my kids, and then I come back here to town after we decide, hey, it's probably time for us to get off the road. We'd like to have children, and that's not it doesn't feel like that's going to be a sustainable life on the road with kids and all the rest of it. And we kind of want to do the American dream thing. We want to have a house and a dog and whatever. And so we do that, and each of those steps, right? I do come back, and I eventually work for the company, and I learn a ton from my dad and my granddad that I'm working for. And in the middle of this, at some point I thought, well, I should do church work. I should really be a pastor at some church, and I should be a music pastor at a church. And so kind of went down that road and pursued that, and realized I had a great conversation with my uncle when I was kind of that had kind of run its course. I was trying to decide if I moved again and got another church job. I had actually an offer in Eagle River up there in Alaska to come and do that. And trying to go through that conversation. And I remember talking to my uncle, and he said, I got into business. He had been a campus crusade guy type of person and had come back and worked for the family business. And he said, I've had more influence with non-believers in this space than I ever would had I stayed in the church. And that resonated with me profoundly, because the truth is like, especially in Colorado where we're 95% of the people are unchurched. They don't go to church. They're not Christians. They're not believers. And so I look at that as like this huge ministry field to be involved, to be able to chance to speak into folks' lives, operate healthily in my own life in those spaces of business, do it ethically, do it well, have those conversations in places that they never would have. Like, they're not coming in the doors of the church, but I might have a chance to have a conversation with them over coffee or an afternoon, place at go to the Mexican restaurant and have something with them. So that stuff has been really cool to me as well. It's a chance to just have different, more profound conversations with people that don't necessarily know who God is or who Jesus is. They know I go to church. They know I participate in things. They know who I am. They know how I live. And we're friends regardless of what their current position is on what they think about faith. And that's been awesome. And so the different business things along the way that I've done, I have probably too many for this episode, but I left the family business at one point because we were fourth generation business, and everybody was going, gosh, we have really competing interests. This is during the 2008 meltdown in real estate that everybody kind of might be aware of. as a family, I'm 30 years old at that time, and my granddad's 80, and he's still working every day, and I'm working every day, and we have really competing interests at that point. You know,
Mm.
he's like, but batten down the hatches. And I'm going, my whole future's in front of us, and this is the best opportunity we'll ever have in the real estate business to go buy property and get at prices that we won't see again in our lifetime, type of thing. And so it was just kind of one of those moments where we just felt like, man, we are all at an impasse here. Let's break this
Yeah.
thing up and let people do what they need to do with it. So we did that, and I took a wild adventure at that point and went off and got in business with my cousin and on another side of the family and my mom's side of the family. And we did an interior design business and all sorts of crazy stuff with that. We did a manufacturing business where we built this stuff that was like a wall panel that we manufactured in here in our town, sold it all over, sold it in Dubai and New York City and Philadelphia. And so I was on an airplane all the time, traveling to try to sell this stuff. And all the way along, I'm meeting all these people that I would never have interacted with had I been a pastor at a church.
Right.
Wouldn't have happened. I would have been localized, and I'm not diminishing that at all. This is just the path that God had for me, and I love it. Like, it's just a beautiful thing that I got to meet all these folks, interact with all these different people all over. I mean, honestly, from coast to coast, in every place possible, and on the phone with people in Dubai. And I mean, it's a wild thing. It's a wild adventure, and that business took a pretty hard turn. We kind of actually had a big failure in that business. And that business led us to try to find another creative solution. So we bought a bunch of campers and did Airbnb out of the campers, and then sold that, and we're able to kind of recover some things. And each of those little moments, right, is just something that I feel like God has been, he takes you down these paths. And he never knew. I thought back in the day when I had my guitar across my shoulder every day, and I was traveling a lot of places. I got to go to Italy and Israel and London and all over Canada and all over the United States. And I thought, man, I never thought that my hands would take me to these places.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think this is crazy, because that just got exponential. The people I've been able to interact with, and all because I learned how to do business in the back of my truck. And now I'm on this side of things, having this chance to have done all these businesses and be a part of all these different things. And yeah, I'm so thankful for it, because my life is super rich because of it. I've had just interactions with all sorts of people and wonderful stories that come from it, and a chance, honestly, to be an influential Christian in their life that isn't just, frankly, coming from like a weirdo space. Like, I'm actually coming from a space that they're in, and I'm going to them and having the chance to be in their space. And I don't have to invite them to, they don't have to come to me first. I get to be in their space, and they get to know who I am. They get to learn that I actually do believe in these things, and I think it's really that it really matters, and that I'm actually being guided by a Holy Spirit, and all those kind of things. Like, those are conversations we're just never going to interact, right? We're never going to interact unless I'm in this space. And I just think it's so beautiful that that's the gift that God gave me over the last 30 years of my career,
Yeah, absolutely. And I love just that overarching theme that I feel like God is taking you on is be an ethical man of business. And I'm going to put you in these different positions and these different situations and locations to interact with people. And that's what he's calling you to do. And it's awesome, because, you think about the ministry of Jesus, even, he traveled around.
Yep.
He walked into towns and he talked with people, and he, yes, he taught in synagogues, but more often than not, we hear about the stories of people he met along the way and the impact that he had on their lives, and, stooping down and being with them, and having dinner with them, and just in conversation. And it's beautiful. I think that's a beautiful picture of what it means to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So that's awesome. So, because business it just seems to be something you're really excited about. And for those of us that struggle a bit to get excited about it, what would be maybe one of the best things or pieces of advice or a tip or a resource or something that you would point people to maybe grow in their business sense a bit?
probably the best piece of advice I could give you, anyone, is go find people that are totally oddballs. They don't fit your creative world, and pick their brain about this stuff. How do I do it? Show me how to set up a Google spreadsheet. It's not terribly hard, but honestly, for most people, it's just a foreign language. It doesn't make any sense. They don't understand that this is a big calculator and it helps you keep track of things, and it's always available. And there's really cool tools. And most people are just like, I don't want to do any of it because I hate numbers, and math was never my strong suit. Well, I sucked at math. I mean, I was terrible at it. I really was. I was no good at doing the math in the class. But as soon as it turned to a tangible thing, okay, if I make this much money, I get to go to this place and stay in this hotel, and I actually might have a little left over to go do something fun.
Yeah.
That just became so alive for me that I think I would have never experienced that had I not tried to really understand philosophically that that's important. It was important for me to continue to do what I really wanted to do. It's helped me get there. And I think if you surround yourself with people that are just not your type, as creatives, we love to surround ourselves with the people that are just like us.
Yeah.
And there are Christians who like feel like, especially the way the church works, the guy that does the spreadsheet isn't nearly as prominent in the church world as the guy that plays the guitar. So, and but there may be some validity to why that is the way it is. But the truth is there's a guy in the back that's doing a spreadsheet that's got a lot of talent to offer. Somebody that doesn't know how to get from point A to point B in that space. I don't know. That's probably the best advice I have. I think everybody has an answer about business. I think there's like I said, there's 1,000 books. There's more books being written right now about business and how to do it than this podcast. It's like 1,000 things that have already been written while we've talked.
Yeah. No kidding.
I just think you find surround yourself with somebody. And like I said, I love doing that for people. I love that coaching piece, because I think people just need to understand that there's you can be awoken to this space, and actually it doesn't have to be as laborious and awful as everyone wants to make it out to be.
Yeah. And I didn't kind of prep you for this, but I would love to know, how do you go about inviting people into like a coaching relationship with you?
Yeah, so I just kind of love to hear their story. I love to kind of understand what's going on, and then if I feel like I can help them, then I'd like to do that. Then I would do that. Otherwise, I'll tell them, hey, based on what you've got going on, here are a couple books I'd probably recommend you read, or some podcasts you might join in on. And then these are the kind of people you need to be looking for. If I can help them in that space and kind of coach them through it, I do it. Interestingly, I do it by reading books with them. I don't actually, and they're never business books. I don't read business books with them. We read old funky books about Jesus from the 70s when we do that stuff. And then we have discussions about it. So then we talk about, well, what does that look like? Most of the time I can do it in person here in town, or in our community, but a lot of times I can do it over the phone, or, these kind of Zoom call type of things. We sit down and we read a chapter, and then we talk about it. And what does that mean philosophically for you as a person? And it's surprising when you start to do that and you get into the philosophy of life and what you actually think about things and what you believe about things. Then amazingly, you start to be able to put stuff in good buckets that allow you to know, okay, well, this is how I might manage this. And I just love seeing that stuff come to life. It's pretty fun.
That sounds very fun. Like coaching through relationship and like getting to know, because every creative person, everybody who, hobbyist or not, like anybody pursuing it as a career, it's going to look different. There isn't going to be any cookie cutter solution to helping them forward. So that's really cool. You're getting down in the trenches with them a bit. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I don't have the answers for their business, right? I don't have the answers for their, like, I don't know how to, I wouldn't be able to tell you how to write a hit single. I mean, I think the music I've written is pretty good, but it never went anywhere. Got me from town to town, but that was about it. And so I can't tell them how to do that stuff, but I can tell them that that's what they want to do. And if that's what they want to, how they want to operate, then there's opportunities here to figure out how to do that and live that way and live philosophically out of that way, so that they can be successful at that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Awesome. Okay. As we kind of round the corner on our talk today, one of my favorite things to do is encourage creative Christians, or just encourage people in general. But I think there isn't enough of that going around in the world. I don't think we take the time to encourage each other very much. And I think one of the drum beats we've heard in doing this show is people just needing to hear something that'll spur them onward in their creativity. So what is a message that you feel like you like to share with creatives the most, and maybe something that most of us need to hear a bit more?
Yeah, well, I think so. I guess and again, not to bring it all the way back to this book I wrote, but the last chapter in the book is kind of this whole thing for them, for my kids, right? And I tell this story about a friend of mine and and a bunch of us, we do this fishing trip every year. And we ended up in the middle of, we were in the middle of Colorado. We were fishing this great river, and there's this like perfectly shaped tree. My friend he owns a nursery, a really successful nursery. He's a business guy. So he owns a nursery. There's not a stitch of music in him at all, but he's, again, another guy that's super creative and is just always trying to figure out how to do business better. He owns a nursery back in Chicago. And so we were together, and he's like totally mesmerized by this evergreen tree on the side of the canyon. And he's like, man, that's just like the perfect tree. It's the perfect specimen of the tree. It's beautiful. It's like exactly the thing. And that happened. And then we were driving, we're going fishing, we're going to go fishing on another river. And so we're driving up Glenwood Canyon, which is this beautiful canyon in Colorado, right in the middle. It's like, it's totally stunning. Interstate runs right through this amazing canyon, and the Colorado River runs below it. And we're driving, and everybody in the car is like, oh, look at how good God is, and how creative he is, and how big he is, and how, he's almighty, and he made all this stuff. And I was just struck by the fact that I think we can also flip that story around uniquely if we want to think about how much God loves us, which is that he might have made that moment specifically for us in the car that morning. Mm-hmm. Like the whole creation could have been set up just for that moment. He's that good, right? Like he's that powerful and amazing that, yes, he did all of these things and made all of these things, but he uniquely made that tree just for my buddy. Like if I think about that, and I think about the creativity that would take as a creator, it's unfathomable that over the whole course of the history of the world and everything that could happen, God might have, did he do that for us? I don't know, but he might have. And that's pretty cool to think about. And I think it's a word of encouragement as somebody that needs to keep going, right? Like I think sometimes it's so easy for us to just get down on ourselves. The world's a mess. I mean, you can't even open the news without finding out how horrible everything is everywhere all the time. And I think my wife this morning, we were kind of like talking about everything that's going on with our kids and how are they going to do this. And she just said, this is a moment in which this is a God problem, right? Like we need to have a God big enough to solve these problems because we can't figure them out. And then I think about, well, that's a really powerful thing. If I think that God is that influential that he might have made that moment for my friends and I, sitting in a car driving down Glenwood Canyon, or a tree for my friend, he's that good that he would do that. And he's that powerful that he might be able to solve all these problems. Like it's easy to just get down in the dumps and just say, I can't do it anymore. I quit. Nobody wants to listen to my songs. Forget it. I'm out of here. But the truth is, I think the world needs your songs if you're that person. He needs my book for whatever reason, right? A goofy thing that I wrote. He needs your talents at your church. Like he needs all those things because he made you. And he loves you. And he's not just this sort of great chess player in the sky that's just kind of hoping everything, he's disappointed when the move doesn't go right or what. It's nothing like that. I think he really actually just is so profoundly in love with his people. And people even that may not yet have named that Jesus matters to them, he's still profoundly in love with them. And he wants the best for them. And he's talking to us all the time in these ways. Here's a sunrise just for you. Mm-hmm. Here's a tree just for you. Here's a sound in a river that it's just, that stuff makes me realize how much God like how much he loves me and how much he loves my kids and my wife and my friends and my world and the people that I don't know and the people I'm yet to interact with, and how much he cares about us and how powerful he is in that space to be able to do that. And I think that's something that I would hope people would be encouraged by. Like, if you are a creative person and you're struggling and it's a hard place to be, because it's a lonely world to be a creative. It really is. I know it very well. It's really easy to give up. It's really easy to quit. It's really easy to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Or blame God that he made you a creative, which I've done. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Why did you wire me this way?
Yes, find this lament in that. And I think if I could encourage anybody, it's continue to flip that script. Yeah. Continue to not put yourself at the center of that piece, but to realize, like, boy, there's a God that just adores you and loves you and cares for you, and actually is trying everywhere he can to speak to you.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think that it's kind of, and this is just, I'm trusting that the Holy Spirit is doing this just through our conversation, but it almost, to me, almost feels like that tree that God created, that your friend marveled at and was touched by, that was a gift of service from the Lord.
Yeah.
And we can view God in his creativity and everything that he made as a gift of service to us. And then, as Christian creatives, we are then in turn creating. God is inspiring us and creating through us in a way, extending further gifts of service to each other. And who knows if the book that we write maybe that will be for someone specific that we have no idea. That song that we write, we don't know. It's just our gift of service to put it out and let God do what he does. And I think that's awesome. That's an awesome encouragement to keep going.
Yeah, keep at it. You don't know. And I think, just like you said, I wasn't expecting that my friend would be totally enamored by this tree that God had made, and that it took him back to where he couldn't, sorry.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing that, sorry, that got me. That's a cool thing that God would be that good.
He's so kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, this has been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for this. As we wrap up, no, this is good. And this is, I love I love doing this because I feel like we can really encourage each other forward in what we're doing. And by kind of talking through and letting the Holy Spirit even guide our conversations, it's beautiful. And it's just such a gift. And I'm thrilled to be able to do this and get to know people like you and be encouraged by you too. So, okay, Aaron, any upcoming projects that you are in the works and might get to share with everybody?
We're always writing stuff. My wife and I are always writing songs. So we're trying our best, I think, to do another EP at some point. We released the last one 4 years ago. We did a Christmas carol too that we kind of rearranged a few years ago too. That was a couple of years ago, and had our boys play viola and violin on it, which was really fun.
Super cool.
But we've always talked about trying to do another one that was a little bit. The last one we did was just we commissioned the producer and said, hey, everything we've ever done before was always kind of acoustic piano and acoustic guitar centered and focused in the sound. We don't want to do that. We want to, I don't even really hardly want to hear the acoustic guitar in any of this stuff. And we don't really want to hear the piano. So he put these cool soundscapes together for us and then kind of went in a different direction. It was really fun to do. I think we want to try to do another one that's kind of more in line with what we've always done, which is more acoustic and folk country type of thing. So I think that's kind of where we're headed right now. So we're working on that. I don't know when we'll be done with it or, how that's going to look, but we're right now, you're doing the heavy lifting and writing songs. That takes a long time.
It does.
Takes a
It
lot of
does
work, and
indeed.
you got to make sure they're good, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're working on at the moment. I'm
Cool.
always writing. So I'm constantly doing that stuff, and would love to write another. That's just for fun, but I really enjoy that a ton. And then business wise, yeah, for my own self in terms of projects on that stuff, we're just I'm just looking for the next opportunity. I started a kind of a small local delivery company. So we do localized deliveries for small business. So we wanted to try to compete with Amazon. So that ought to be interesting. But that's kind of what I'm doing, is trying to help local businesses be successful in that space, and give them the convenience that Amazon does for everybody, but also help people not have the excuse that they can't shop locally. So kind of in that space at the moment, that's been a really fun, wild, amazing adventure to get into that too. So
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds really cool. A way to really serve your community in that way too. That's awesome.
yeah, I love our town here. I love Fort
Yeah.
Collins, Windsor, where we're at, and I love local businesses, and I see them kind of struggling to try to
Yeah.
compete with kind of the corporatist stuff that's going on. And I thought, man, well, not let's try it. Let's go get it done. And so we're in the middle of that, and that's a cool, fun, creative. Takes every ounce of energy you could ever hope you think that you have, and it's great.
And it's great. I'm exhausted, but it's great. I love it. I think that's the story of our lives, isn't it? I'm
Yep.
exhausted, but it's all great. I love it. Well, best wishes in that endeavor too. And how can our listeners best connect with you?
Well, I do have probably the best way, honestly, is that website on the books. That's the easiest way to
Okay.
get a hold of me. It's carelessandthecare.com. I think that's the URL. Gosh, now I'm saying that, and I want to make sure I've got that right.
That's
Hold on.
okay. We'll look it up
You'll
and we'll get it in the
look
show
up and
notes
get
for
it right.
everybody.
It's I think that's what it is, carelessandthecare.com.
Good.
And that's probably the easiest way, because my emails are there and stuff. And I, yeah, again, it's probably more focused on the book as a website, but
Hmm.
I write things there from time to time. And then if somebody wanted to talk to me about business or coaching or anything like that, then that would be a great place to connect with me.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, I love to end my episodes with my guests by praying for you and everything that you've got going, and just thanking God for our time. And then everybody stick around because we get to hear one of Aaron's original songs too. So stick around for that. After I pray, he'll just tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll get to enjoy that together. So let's
Great.
go to prayer.
Thanks.
Well, Father God, thank you for this just spirit-filled conversation with Aaron today. I'm just so thankful for your presence here with us and the gift that this conversation was to me, and I know it will be to your people that listen in. Lord, thank you for the ways that you've guided Aaron in his life and the various adventures you've taken him on, and how that has shaped and molded him into the man that you desire him to be. And we pray that that is a process that continues for your glory, Lord, in his family life, in his community, in his pursuits of his creativity through music and writing. And as he comes alongside others in pursuit of doing business while being a good steward of the gifts that you've given us and the resources that you've given us, Lord, thank you for gifting him in the ability to talk shop in that way with people and encourage them forward in that. We thank you for his time today to just pour in a lot of encouraging words and suggestions and shifts. And it's such a gift, Lord. We pray for his family as they continue in their homeschool pursuits. This school year kicking off here, and we just pray for many blessings for him and his wife in that, and their four boys. Such a beautiful, holistic approach to learning about how to be citizens of this world and what it means to be men of God. I pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you.
All right, Aaron, what song are you going to share with everybody today?
This is a song that I wrote on the last EP we did. So this is 4 years old. We actually, it's almost 4 years ago. That's almost 4 years ago to the date. This is called Please. And this is a song that I think from to date, this is probably my favorite song I've written. And it's kind of a lament about, or like a prayer to God about life, and when it doesn't quite seem like it's going the way you want it to, and what's his involvement in it, and how do we see it, and can, so it starts kind of with my, hey, I don't know if you're quite as real as I think you are, and then moves to the end, and the please portion of this is really about could we be something different as people, and not just hoping that the church will do the job for us. Kind of, yeah. So anyway, it's my favorite song that I've written to date. And I loved how it turned out, and it was really fun to create. This is the one that I was talking about, where it was just totally atmospherically different than anything we'd ever done before. And it was really, really fun to create this and put it together.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing it with us today, and thank you for your time. And it was so good to connect with you. And everybody, check the show notes for how to connect with Aaron, and stay tuned for Please.
I'd like to be honest, but you don't talk to me. There's something in the bite of this whiskey that tastes like more than you might be.
Thank you so much for listening today. To see the resources mentioned in this episode, you can head over to theophanymedia.com/Aaron.
To support the show and join our patron community, where you'll get extra access and exclusive content, visit us at patreon.com/Creatively Christian. Creatively Christian is a product of Theophany Media. You can find out more at theophanymedia.com. This show is hosted by Brandon Hollingsworth, Andrea Sandefur, Dave Ebert, and Rachel Anna. Our logo is by Bill Brooks. Bill Brooks and Andrea Sandefur did our music, and Jake Dobrins produces and edits the show.